There is something quite special about Japanese spiritual architecture, Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples, which has always drew me in. I could best describe them as profoundly peaceful. The best examples of Japanese shrines and temples are magnificent ancient structures. They remind you about the transience of your own physical existence and suggest the eternity of your soul. With that, they ground you in the present moment. I was always deeply fascinated by these qualities, and I was striving to try and understand what makes these places so magnetic and profound for me, as well as obviously for so many others who come to visit them from far away. The following would be an attempt to analyze a temple complex called Yamadera from architectural, spatial, and philosophical points of view. In doing so, I will discuss certain features that are characteristic not only of this temple complex, but of Japanese sacred architecture and space arrangement in general. Yamadera would serve as a particularly beautiful illustration of them. Yamadera is a common name for a Buddhist temple complex in Japan's Yamagata Prefecture, around 3 hours up north from Tokyo on the bullet train. The name, Yamadera, in Japanese is comprised of two characters, meaning mountain and temple, so it can be literally and correctly translated as mountain temple from Japanese. This temple has been around for more than 1,000 years. The very first thing that strikes you upon visiting a Japanese shrine or a temple is probably its relation to nature. Most of the time when you're visiting, you're not inside of a building, but outside. You can be in a forest, on a mountain, or in the temple's courtyard. You rarely enter a shrine or a temple building itself. This relationship has to do with the origins of Shinto. Shinto is the original religion of the Japanese, and it is deeply rooted in nature. In Shinto, there are many gods, or kami in Japanese, which are believed to exist in natural elements, such as oceans, forests, mountains, stones, and trees. Some of the original Shinto shrines were old and deep forests. The second major religion in Japan is Buddhism. Buddhism was introduced to Japan from China, where it came to from India. When Buddhism came to Japan, it did not replace Shinto, but rather started merging with it in a peaceful and organic way. We can see it reflected in architecture as well. Early Buddhist temples had a more symmetric and rigid arrangement on a given site. Yet merging with Shinto gave Buddhist architecture a greater awareness of the natural surroundings. Over time, Buddhist temples started having more natural, asymmetrical plans, with greater attention to the location of trees, rocks, and other natural elements. This is precisely what we can observe in Yamadera as well. Yamadera is a Buddhist temple complex, yet it is built into its site in a rather profound way. It takes us on a journey through a deep forest, and it sits on top of the mountain in a gentle way. One of the central concepts of space arrangement in Japan is inward orientation. It can be observed on many levels, from houses and temples to villages and cities. Oku in Japanese means depth, inner part. When we apply this term to spatial concepts, we can translate it as inner space. The person to point out the presence of this concept and to write on it in detail was Fumihiko Maki, a prolific Japanese architect who was also awarded Pritzker Prize in Architecture. Maki illuminates the concept of Oku in his essays for the book City with a Hidden Past. The philosophical idea behind the inner space is quite simple, yet profound. It comes from the belief that the most important things should remain hidden from sight and protected by layers of space. In temple architecture, this is manifested through the presence of the most sacred structures in the depths of the complex, at the end of the path. In many temples around Japan, you might come across a structure with the same name, Oku no In or Oku no Miya. This simply means an inner shrine. Interestingly, even despite its hidden position and symbolic meaning, Oku no In is usually not the main shrine and not the most impressive one architecturally. It can be rather a humble structure without the qualities of culmination and grand arrival. The logic here is a bit more subtle. It celebrates the journey itself just as much as the destination. Yamadera is a perfect illustration for this concept. The journey that takes you up the mountain by ascending 1,000 stone steps under the canopies of trees is a culmination in itself and an unforgettable experience. The ritual of passing through a holy place to its most sacred depth can be viewed as a journey through layers. However, to me, it is much more like a passage through a world of symbolic fragments. In that world, a sense of scale is altered by passing by, under, and through freestanding elements, such as story gates, large canopies of ancient trees, stone lanterns, and statues. They populate the sides of the path, sit on top of the hills, and inside caves. Finally, there are multiple shrine structures, each unique in its own way. There is no desire to construct the whole and complete world in itself, like one building with its walls as precise boundaries, clearly separating the natural and the human-made. Instead, it is recognizing the innate qualities of the place and appreciating them for what they are. It is about the harmonious coexistence of the natural and the human-made. To summarize, these are some of the main qualities that make Japanese sacred architecture so special. Celebration of nature. From the original Shinto beliefs, nature is seen as sacred. Many shrines and temples are located in the remote natural places, in the deep forests, or on top of the mountains. Nature is always an important part of a sacred place. Oku, or inner space. Inner space is located in the very depth and protected by many layers of space. This is one of the key concepts in the Japanese built environment. It emphasizes that the most important things should remain hidden from plain sight. Celebration of the journey. The journey that takes you to the sacred place is just as important and meaningful as the destination. A world of symbolic fragments. Japanese sacred architecture is not one building with precise boundaries. It is a world of symbolic fragments, gently integrated in its environment to respect and celebrate the place and nature itself.